back to the Bay State Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Melia. Today's topic is the best golf courses in the Bay State for beginners. Before we jump in, just want to make a quick plug to head over to baystategolf.beehiiv.com. Beehiiv is BEEHIIV.com. Subscribe to my newsletter. Of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're listening on podcasts, please subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcasts. I send out 2 newsletters a week. Fridays is free. There's a midweek one that is sent to premium subscribers. Please sign up if you want to support Bay State Golf and my quest to play every golf course in Massachusetts. That's a great way to do it. Really appreciate folks who have signed up for the premium subscription. It means a lot. And I'm looking forward to bringing you some great stuff as the summer gets rolling here. I just got in the door from a trip to central Pennsylvania, way outside the Bay State, to play Lancaster Country Club. Was awesome. I'll have some stuff on Instagram, have some stuff on the newsletter about my day out there for the U.S. Open Women's Media Day. So just subscribe to the newsletter and you'll kind of get all of my stuff, especially that free Friday newsletter in one place. Okay, let's jump into this topic, which came to mind because I was talking to my friend Tung, who has been on this podcast before. He started playing golf in just a little bit around COVID, maybe a little bit afterwards. And I just got home from playing a golf course on my drive back from Pennsylvania that felt like it was definitely a great golf course that you might bring a beginner to play. So I kind of put together a list as I was driving home in my mind of courses. I think if you've got someone new in your life who wants to play golf, maybe you're someone who is looking for a place to just kind of get into the game. These places I think are going to be a good place to start. For me, the things that I was keeping in mind through, what makes a good course for a beginner, a little bit of value, right? You want to have a bit of freedom to maybe walk off after you've played 5 or 6 holes, or you've played 12 or 13 holes and not feel like you didn't get your money's worth because you paid $100. So value is definitely one thing. A little bit of just ease of play as far as, are there a ton of forced carries? Are there a bunch of water hazards? Are you hitting over bunkers to get to greens? If you're somewhere in the middle of the hole down the line of charm, is the rough super long? Is it pretty open? So some of those things I tried to take into consideration. Just, is it easy enough to play for someone who maybe can't always get the ball airborne, or doesn't hit the ball super far, or gets intimidated trying to hit balls over a bunker or hazard, or even hitting balls out of bunkers? So I kept that in mind as well. And then also just a little bit of, is it an easy walk? Could you carry your bag and go play and just kind of enjoy yourself? I think especially for beginners, you don't need a full bag of clubs to play most golf courses. I have thought a lot about something Andy Johnson said on one of his podcasts on the Fried Egg, just about, bringing someone into the game. You don't want to just give them like really sterile, boring golf. There's, that exists everywhere. And he compared it to bringing someone to a coffee shop, or someone who's never had coffee before. You wouldn't bring them to a gas station to have their first cup of coffee. You might bring them somewhere where they can get a sense and appreciate what it takes to make a good cup of coffee. And I think the same goes, and he kind of compared it to beginner golf and public golf, and having a few things at a golf course that are somewhat interesting, that might pique someone's interest, maybe a shot or two here or there that kind of shows a little bit of growth over the course of playing. So thinking maybe there is 1 or 2 holes where you have to hit it over a bunker, you have to get it over a little hazard, and that can show a little bit of growth, and it marks development over the course of playing. So I think that's kind of a nice little piece, and all these courses have those little bits in there as well. So let's get to all of these courses. I've got a handful of them. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly here. And I would encourage you to go and check all of these out, or check out the ones that are in your part of the state. I tried to, as usual, pick out some spots that are in some different places. And these are only courses I've played. There are certainly other ones out there that I have not seen yet that I am sure fall into this category. If you have one, send it my way, add it to the comments on YouTube. You could email me, sean@baystategolf.com. I always like to just have new places to go check out and have a sense of maybe what to expect. First course on this list is Cotuit High Grounds, basically a par 3 golf course with one par 4, crazy greens. I've heard right now it is very, very difficult because it's pretty firm. We've had a little bit of a dry spell here, and this is the window of time where Cotuit gets really hard. But the holes, measure from 60 yards to the par 4 is not even, it's kind of a drivable hole. There's some par 3s where you have to hit like a 7-iron, 160, 170 yards. But as far as like the place and the energy, I've talked about Cotuit a ton of times. Very laid back, come as you are. You could go out with 3 golf clubs. You could go out with 1 golf club and kind of just get it around and enjoy yourself. It's a super easy place to walk. It's 9 holes. It's a par 28. And you will definitely get those little moments of like, oh, I hit this ball onto this green, or I hit this ball over this bunker. One of the holes, I think it's the 5th, it's like you're hitting through a field goal of trees. There's an extra tee box, so you can kind of skip that part of the hole if you wanted to. But definitely one of those kind of markers of improvement if you want to give it a try, and fail a bunch of times maybe as a beginner, and slowly try to figure out like, how the heck do I hit a 130-yard shot through this tiny window to a wild green. But the greens are kind of fun, makes you learn how to chip and putt. You'll definitely get very good at chipping and putting pretty quickly. So Cotuit in Cotuit, Mass, Cotuit Village, just a really kind of fun golf experience to go play. And also one of those places that someone who is an experienced golfer could go and bring a beginner and enjoy themselves too, and feel pretty engaged by the day, because it kind of challenges all different levels. So another nice part about Cotuit is it creates challenge for everybody. Next up, 9-hole golf course south of the city. Another one I've talked about a bunch is Marion. Cork everywhere. But as far as for a beginner, yes, you have some holes that have rock walls that you have to hit over. Once again, maybe one of those things you kind of learn to do over time. You can always hit it through the wall because there's little openings. There's some berms that run across a couple holes where you'd have to hit over them. So there's these little markers of improvement at Marion, but it is a pretty flat golf course. The greens are not really super challenging, except for maybe the second hole. You can roll the ball onto most of them, so you're not always trying to fly a ball onto the green. You can kind of bump it, you could putt it. So kind of all sorts of different ways to get the golf ball around at Marion. Another really low-key place. It's 9 holes. The 9th hole is another maybe a hard hole for a beginner. Punch bowl green where you're hitting over a bunker, little par 3. But overall, I think it just provides that nice, like, you can show up, you can play your 9 holes, you can kind of slap it around a little bit, you can pick up when you feel like you might need to. But as far as challenge, you're not hitting way uphill, you're not hitting way downhill, you're not getting a ton of uneven lies, but you've got these little obstacles that you kind of have to try to play over or around or through. And I think that makes Marion pretty interesting. Again, another good place for the experienced golfer too, because they can get a little bit out of it and go play 9 holes and enjoy themselves as well, which I did when I played it. Next up is Unicorn in Stoneham, Mass, a golf course I've played a handful of times. I haven't checked it off officially on my list, but I have played this place 1 through 9. I've played it a bunch of different order. I have experienced this golf course with a beginner. This was a place that during COVID, my wife and I would go, and I'd make the very last tee time of the day, go play Twilight. The first 3 holes are kind of run adjacent to each other, so you could play 1, 2, 3, and then you could play 2 again. You could play 1, 2, 3, 4. and then play 2 after that. So you can kind of play it in a bunch of different ways when you have the place to yourself. And there's some good holes out there as well, but you're not hitting again over a lot of things. But Unicorn has, a couple perched up greens that you have to maybe hit up to or putt up to. It's got some bunkering, got some longer holes. It has a par 5. So, I think Unicorn is a good spot to bring a beginner. You could play 4 holes and go home. They have a little chipping green, which is kind of nice. They have a half decent putting green. And they're, again, pretty laid back. This is not a place, and I'd say most of these places fall under this category, that you want to bring someone on a Saturday afternoon, right? I don't think there's a lot of golf courses right now that, are going to be nice and quiet. But on a weeknight, twilight round, these places all kind of fit the bill. So Unicorn in Stoneham, close to Woburn, right off 93, super simple to get to from where I live, on the northern tip of Boston. So Unicorn is another one worth bringing a beginner and playing. Kind of just got some cool land movement and some good shots, and definitely some little markers of improvement there too. Maynard Golf Course. I think it used to be Maynard Country Club back when I grew up playing here. So as a beginner, this was where I learned to play golf. And I loved playing golf here. It was really all I knew when I started playing. It is a nice place to learn to play because there are some good par 3s that are uphill. There's the opening tee shot, you're going way downhill. You've got some bunkers as you kind of get better. Maybe you could hit over the bunkers off the tee. That was one of our things when we were beginning and playing in middle school, that, if you could hit it over those bunkers, that was kind of like touching the top of the door jamb as you're getting taller and you're trying to figure out how high you can jump and how tall you've gotten. It was just a really good place to learn. There are some holes with a little bit of water that you can play around. You could try to play over. Again, there's some greens that you're hitting up to a little bit, so they're perched up. There's a couple good, like you're going to have some downhill lies possibly. And just a kind of a nice, short, manageable 9-hole golf course that is still affordable. It wasn't in great shape when I played it last year, which is a bummer. It's a little bit in disrepair right now. But Maynard, I played with a 5-year-old last year too, and he had a blast getting it around there. So Maynard Golf Course, I believe is what it's called now, is a good one. John F. Parker in Taunton, Mass. I played this one last year. This was the 99th course on my in my quest. Maynard was my 100th, so I played these pretty close proximity to one another last spring. Another, simple 9-holer, not a lot of stuff in the way between the tee to the green. There's some, rolling hills, so you are going to play uphill, you are going to play downhill, but you're not really forced to carry anything. Some of the greens are pretty good. You can roll the ball onto the greens. Not a ton of bunkers. I think most of these places, like if you're in a bunker, it's going to be hard to get out because bunkers aren't that great at a lot of these places. But John F. Parker also has a driving range, so it's kind of a nice place. You can go, you can practice a little bit before you go play. It's not a super long golf course, but it does have, a shortish par 5, and it's got cool downhill par 4s. You got a couple blind shots in there, which are kind of thrilling for beginner golfers. So John F. Parker in Taunton. I think I paid $20 cash, I just pulled up on a Monday afternoon and, went into the pro shop, which is also just the bar, and paid my $20 in cash. And they were like, first tee's yours. So Monday afternoon, of course, like I said, maybe these are weekday options for the most part. Weekends are kind of a crapshoot with public golf. But John F. Parker, another great option. Cedar Glen in Saugus, a golf course I had never heard of until I started this quest. It is very straightforward, very shaggy. You definitely, don't have to worry about taking big divots or making a little bit of a mess. Just make sure you replace them, obviously. But it's got par threes, par fours, par fives. It has a really long par three. It's another place that has, some subtle movement. There's a couple holes. There's a par three where you've got to hit it over a trap. There's a couple, I guess, from the farther back tees, a couple little water hazards that are right in front of tee boxes, which I know can make beginners a little bit anxious, but I'm pretty sure the forward tees, if you want to play the forward tees, kind of take those out of play. Very laid back. Another place where I think I went from closing my trunk to the first tee in like 6 minutes. I played with a guy there who worked at Logan. He does, I think he worked in kind of like helping down on the runway and getting planes around and luggage and getting stuff just kind of organized down there. So kind of like I love running into people who, are blue collar workers. I've played with Unicorn last week or 2 weeks ago. I played with a guy who is an engineer and mechanic on the Orange Line and just like built and runs and maintains Orange Line trains. So like, I think that's great. That might come across as like a little bit snobby. But I think we forget that like golfers are not all people who are working in the financial district and coming out to play in the afternoons. Like there is so much more, and you meet a lot of people who do not have those lifestyles, who are playing and paying their $30 to $40 to walk 9 holes or 18 holes after work, before work, whenever they can. So Cedar Glen in Saugus, it's kind of like near the Square One Mall, if I remember correctly. Good option. And the last 9-holer, and then I've got 4 18-hole golf courses here. The last 9-holer is Cedar Hill in Stoughton, Mass. I played here with my buddy Pat, who doesn't play a ton of golf. It is another, it's relatively flat, relatively open, especially after you get past like the first couple holes. It's just kind of this open pasture, a couple trees separating holes, relatively flat. You can roll the ball around. A pretty good spot. I wouldn't say it's the most engaging place if you are, a 12 handicap or an 8 handicap or a 3 handicap, but going out with a beginner and helping them kind of learn the game, it's another good place. There's a couple challenging holes. There's a par 3 late in the round. Maybe it's the 7th hole that's like pretty tricky. There's the 9th hole is a little bit tough. So there's a couple holes again where like making par would be a little bit of like, oh, that was a pretty good hole I just had, and makes you want to come back and play again. So Cedar Hill in Stoughton, Mass is the final 9-holer, and then 4 18-holers that I think are worth pointing out. First one is one I played as a kid. I played again on a double dip when I played Sandy Burr, and that is Wayland Country Club. I liked Wayland. I think it is once you kind of get a beginner who's ready to play 18 holes, it also has a really good ripcord spot after, I think, 12. That brings you pretty close to the clubhouse, that if you play 12 holes at Wayland and you're ready to go home, you're not paying a ton of money, that only playing 2/3 of the holes doesn't feel like you're losing out. And if you're, I feel like most beginners who play kind of get to 9, that jump to 18 is really hard. And if you can find a place that has 12, 13-hole loop that you can do, pretty good option. Wayland has, it's flat. It's a little narrower. So this is like, this starts to, if you're playing 18 holes and you're a beginner, it's probably because you've hopefully played 9-hole courses or maybe a pitch and putts, and you've kind of built yourself up to playing an 18-hole golf course. In this case, Wayland is a little narrower. So you've got a bunch of trees, but the holes are pretty flat. They're pretty short. The greens aren't super challenging, but they do have a little bit of interest. I tend to like the 3rd and 4th hole the most. And then I think it's the 8th hole if I remember correctly, is a really tough par 3. It's a tough par 3 for everybody because it's a green that's raised up. You have to hit over a water hazard. So definitely one of those holes that is like a marker of getting better. If you can consistently play that one and get your ball over the hazard and onto the green, or at least on a dry land, and chip on and one putt or two putt and make a par or a bogey. Yeah, so Wayland, some dog legs. So you start to get a little bit of like, you have to hit at a certain distance to get to a point where you can see around the trees to get to the green. So Wayland is a really good option if you live out in that direction. I like even more. Sandy Burr, I think, is very good, but Sandy Burr doesn't strike me as a place I'd want to bring a beginner. There's those marshy holes, 5, 6, 7, 8, even, that are kind of tough. You start with 2 par 5, so you're starting with like 2 for a beginner longer holes, and then you play a short par 3, and then a long par 4 and a long par 3. Like, I could see a beginner at Sandy Burr feeling very downtrodden after playing those opening holes, just because they're long. The par 3 is a forced carry. You got to hit over a bunker, even though it's a short hole. So Sandy Burr would be like the next step up. If you've kind of graduated from these courses, Sandy Burr might be a good one to play after that. But Wayland down the street from Sandy Burr is very much a good option for a beginner golfer. Ritter Farm, an 18-holer as well, that I liked. And this is another one that, it's a little bit longer than Wayland. It's the front 9 is pretty flat. You're playing pretty much from tee to green, not hitting over a lot of things, especially if you play from the forward tees. There's not a lot of trouble. The 9th hole might be the only one. It's a dog leg that kind of bends around some water. The back 9 also it gets like a little bit harder. So you play the front 9, kind of a nice way to ease in, and then you go play the back, and there's a little bit more to the back. 10's kind of a tricky hole. 11's a good par 5. You start to get some funny dog legs. You have a little bit of, there's definitely some quirk at Ritter because there's the power lines up there and out there. So Ritter Farm struck me as a place that's very low key. Another place that is worth bringing a beginner to. Next one, I got home from playing this today. I played it this morning. I walked it in under 3 hours by myself, a spot that I pulled up to on my drive back from Pennsylvania. I spent the night, kind of drove a little bit, spent the night, and on the rest of the drive home, I pulled up at 8:30, and tee was wide open. Paid my $35, headed out, ran into one group, a foursome. After 3 holes, they let me play through. And it was there. First off, this place has, I think you could probably count the amount of bunkers at Pine Ridge on 2 hands. I mean, there are no bunkers. I think it took me the first 10 through 15 have no bunkers on them at all. They are on the other side of the road that cuts through the golf course. And as I was walking up 15, I thought, I haven't seen a single bunker yet. Like, there's been nothing to aim at, nothing to avoid. I kind of loved it. It was great. And then you start to get some bunkers on the other side of the road, but like not a lot. So a lot of grass. There's some trees, but not a lot of trees. Some of them are annoying and kind of big and in the way in some spots, but I think that's more for golfers who have played golf and aren't beginners. But as far as beginners, as I was walking around, I thought this would be a really nice place to bring someone who is new to the game. There's some blind tee shots. There's a couple holes in there that are like, man, this hole's kind of dumb. But for the most part, I thought it was a pretty good golf course. I thought the greens, which had just been punched, so they weren't, they were slow. And that's just this time of year. I have no complaints about punched greens when you pull up and you're able to get a tee time without making one online and they just send me out. That's fine. If I'm going to play like a place I want to play and I'm excited and they're punched, like that kind of stinks. But these had been punched, and They were slow, but they weren't sandy. They weren't plinko. Didn't make a lot of putts, which is fine. But like the greens, as far as just interest wise, were actually pretty good. And the thing I really liked about them is a lot of them were, I mean, turtleback is not the right phrase here, but like visually, a lot of them, you had to play like slightly up to them, and they had shaved. They do a lot of nice work where they have it kind of short grass around the edge. So it's not just fringe and then rough. There's a little bit more fringe and short grass, especially in the front of the greens. So very playable for beginners. Not a lot of bunkers, not a lot of forced carries. I'd say the 16th hole is probably one of the worst holes that I've played on the Quest. Very much did not enjoy that hole. Weird blind downhill tee shot and like hard dog leg and all that kind of stuff. But most of these courses and most courses you play, even with a beginner or a beginner style golf course, they're going to have their weird holes, and you just kind of put up with them. But it's a par 71, but it's only 5,900 yards. I would quibble with par 71, not to sound like Bryson and say it should be it should be a par 67, but there's no hole over 500 yards. So all the par fives are very short. So it's also, if you've got someone who's a beginner and is and can hit the ball pretty far and feels like they're kind of ready to graduate to the next level, not a bad place to go and shoot a good score and feel pretty good about yourself, because you could make a couple birdies on some of the par fours that are pretty short. But Pine Ridge, it's in North Oxford, Massachusetts. So kind of in that Worcester area. It's close enough to Treehouse. It's not right next to it like Heritage is. I'm waiting to play Heritage, which is a place that I've got some specific guys from college that I want to play there with. But go get some beers at Treehouse, go play Pine Ridge, or vice versa, and kind of enjoy a little bit of time out in that part of the state if you are driving a little bit. I wouldn't say Pine Ridge is worth driving to as far as going a long way, but if you live in that area and you've got a beginner golfer, Pine Ridge is definitely a nice option and definitely has some interest to it. And then finally on this list, DW Field. I think this place rocks. I love DW Field. I've only played it once. I walked off thinking I have to get back down here. It's definitely one of those places that I have not played now in a few years, and I don't like that I haven't played there in a few years since I checked it off the list. Interesting greens, awesome greens, kind of hard to putt that you could argue a beginner might be overwhelmed, but like they're fun to putt. And when something like that can engage a new golfer, it can make the rest of the round way more manageable, because maybe they're out of a hole, they could pick their ball up, they could just plop one down on the green and putt. And that, I think that kind of makes DW Field kind of a nice option. There's also just some really good holes out there. There's some harder holes out there. So this one is kind of another one that can certainly challenge beginner, but again, not a lot of force carries, not a ton of elevation change, but you get some subtle stuff. Not a lot of, bunkers in the way, but there are a few. So you get those little moments where you're trying to hit it over a bunker. You got to go around. But DW Field, architecturally really interesting. If you have someone who is interested in golf and maybe is just getting into the game but watches it on TV or however else they've kind of gotten into it, DW Field is a pretty great public option to play golf as a beginner for sure, and as a single digit or like a 10 to 15 handicap, it's also really good. And I think, again, that goes a long way if you want to bring a beginner along and still feel like you're getting something out of the experience because you're playing alongside them and want to hit some shots and see some good golf holes and a good golf course. DW Field definitely scratches that itch too. So those are the golf courses. If you have a beginner in your life, I am recording this on May 1st. Golf season is very much upon us. We are here. Maybe you've got someone who is interested in giving golf a try, I'll run through all these golf courses one more time. We've got Katuitt High Grounds. We've got Marion, Unicorn, Maynard, John F. Parker, Cedar Glen, and Cedar Hill. Those are the 9-hole options that I think are pretty great for beginners. And then 4 18-hole golf courses: Wayland, Ritter Farm, Pine Ridge, DW Field. In the comments, give me some of your favorite places to bring a beginner, maybe a place you learned to play the game. And let's kind of compile a list here of places that beginners can go and enjoy the game, learn the game, and feel like they're getting better as they're doing it. Thanks, as always, for listening. Once again, check out the newsletter, baystategolf.beehiiv.com, BEEHIIV.com, and you'll get links and all sorts of stuff every Friday to all of my subscribers. And if you'd like to help support my quest, give me some gas money, some tea money, so I can play some golf. I'd appreciate it. You get a little bit more from that. You get an extra newsletter a week. I'm going to make some videos for the year that kind of pull you in a little bit into my quest, and just some extra bonus material over the course of the year, and the ability to comment on posts as well. So trying to build, a little bit of a Bay State golf community here. So if you are interested in doing that, please subscribe to the premium subscription. If you just want to dip your toe and get my Friday newsletter and see what I'm up to every week, you can absolutely do that too. Thanks again for listening. Go enjoy a good beginner golf course. Go get someone into the game. And until next time, hit them straight.